Charity, you mentioned also you're passionate about building high-performing team. Lately, I've seen one of your talk about CI/CD and also the blog post. So can you share us a little bit more about what do you think about high-performing team? What is actually a high-performing team versus the
Yeah.
low-performing one?
A high-performing team is one that gets to spend almost all of their time solving interesting problems that move the business forward, not doing a lot of toil, not like working on things that they have to do in order to get to the things that they want to do, not slogging through fixing the build again, not slogging through outages, not waiting for a test to pass, not waiting for deploys to finish, fixing something and then realizing it was a different problem. Just like all of the stuff that makes this job frustrating sometimes. I think that we tend to take for granted that it has to be that way. I've now worked on a few high-performing teams where it doesn't. If you get your shit in order, you can have a job where you spend most of your time solving new and interesting problems. And that is just, it's a joy, right? It brings a joy to your work that is just, it's indescribable. And in order to get there, I think that focusing on the DORA metrics is a really good place to start. How often do you deploy? How long does it take? How often does it fail? How long does it take to restore time to recovery? And a lot of improving those metrics involves leveling up with observability, seeing what you're doing, like putting in your glasses before you go and you drive down the freeway. And a lot of teams, they're really flying blind. That means that a lot of their work is wasted. I also feel like it's important to note that high-performing teams, they need to feel emotional safety. They need to support each other. They need to be kind. And the high-performing teams, you don't get them by just hiring the best people or hiring the best engineers. You don't. In fact, some of the people I've known who are the best individual engineers are pretty toxic to teams. Overall, you as a leader, it's your responsibility not to coddle the best engineers. It's your responsibility to build teams that have a very steady, strong level of combined output, because that's what wins the race. It's not individuals. It's setting your teams up for success. I just published a slide deck with a bunch of steps the other day. I do think that the number one technical point that people should focus on, which I know that this is something that nobody would disagree with, right? We should have high-performing teams that spend all their time on moving the business forward. No fucker's going to disagree with that sentence. The hard part is how. How. And the place to start for almost everybody I've ever talked to is you need to shrink the amount of time between when someone has written the code and when the code is live. You should get that interval down to 15 minutes or less. And if you get that, you get to spend your time on a lot of problems that are much, much higher up the value chain. But if you get that wrong, you're just going to waste all your time tending to the pathologies. And it's really inefficient, ineffective. In my experience, if the number of people it takes to write and build the system is, say, X number with a 15-minute or less interval, well, if that interval stretches to hours, you need twice as many people. If that interval stretches to days, you need twice as many people again. And if it's weeks, you need twice as many again. Because the cost of context switching and waiting on each other, and the diffs get bigger and the reviews take longer. And now you need a dedicated SRE team to like manage all of the deploys and the failures, and the changes get batched up. It's just this death spiral. So that's the place that I think everyone needs to start, is getting that fully automated and 15 minutes or less. And then everything is going to get so much easier for you.
Or in short, it's a continuous delivery, right? So that's what the team should aspire for.
Continuous delivery for real.
Yeah. So 15 minutes, to me, that sounds really short amount of time. And there's so many things that people wants to do in the pipeline, like, for example, automated tests, performance tests, security tests, whatever tests. So is that really important to have 15 minutes as a max limit?
Yes. I feel like I'm being generous with that. It is important because you don't want people to have enough time in there to be able to shift context. That moment when you've written the code, you want this to be a small diff, right? You want this to be like a few lines. How quickly can you deploy one line of code? It should be your goal here, right? You want to be short enough that you hook into people's physiological systems, their muscle memory. You want all of your developers to go and look at their code after they've shipped it. So it needs to be short enough that it hooks into your physical like expectation, just like you don't feel done until you've gone and you looked at it. And so if that's an hour or more, I'm sorry, that's too much time. Someone's gone and switched over to something else, and that means that they've flushed all of this context out of their head and they've gotten distracted and they're not going to do it regularly. And if it's an hour or more, then I guarantee you're going to start batching multiple people's changes up together, when it's really important that you be shipping one person's change set at a time, because that creates ownership. If it's your change going out, you're going to go look at it. If you know it's your change and 1 to 20 of your coworkers going out at some point in the next day, you're not going to go look at it. You need to construct that feedback loop and keep it crisp.
And also notice that you are one of the strongest proponents for testing in production, right? Is that also one of the reasons why? Because you want to achieve these 15 minutes, right? You can't do a lot of testing.
It all goes together. It all goes together. I think there's been a major sea change over the past 5 years in terms of startups that have started, the way people are talking about this stuff. It used to be that we put all this focus on pre-production stuff. All of our energy went to like every developer gets their own staging environment and all of this pre-production stuff and everything. But we've hit diminishing returns a long time ago there. And I feel like over the last 5 years, we've started to focus correctly much more on, okay, but now what about production? We need tools for production that are like scalpels, that are very sensitive and very precise. Developer cycles are the scarcest resource in our universe. They're not infinite. If we're wasting them all on pre-production stuff, then we're left with nothing for production. I just think that the importance needs to be inverted there. We need to be thinking first about production. Do we have the tools that we need to ship safely and swiftly and understand what's going on? And then give 80% to production and 20% to pre-production instead of 80% to pre-production and 20% to production. But the point is not that everyone should be testing in production. The point is that everyone is testing in production, whether you admit it or not. And you're better off if you just admit it and try to do it well. Don't deny, and then sneakily like SSH in to see what's going on. No, everybody has to test in production. You do, I do. It's not embarrassing. It's a fact of life. Now, how can we do it better?
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, I also test in productions most of the times because you can't really predict what actually happened when the...
Yeah, you have no way. The gold standard is to capture and replay like 24 hours worth of traffic. And I will say that the closer you get to laying bits on disk, the more paranoid you should be. I have written this suite of software 3 times for 3 different databases that captures 24 hours of traffic and replays it again and again under different conditions and stuff. You should know when to do that. Major database upgrade, you should absolutely fucking do that. But every day when you're shipping a few lines at a time, no, of course not. But you should invest that energy into observability. And if you want to get really precise and really, you should be using feature flags so that you can flip that on and off so that you can decouple your releases from your deploys. You should invest in observability so that you can see, and canaries. So if you're really scared about a change, ship it to 1% of the traffic, or ship it to 1% of the users, or ship it to one node. Build the tools that will let you have this very high level of precision around who you're shipping it to, and then the ability to compare the traffic streams so that you can see what the difference in error rates is, or what the difference in latency is, or anything like that. Build those tools to address your paranoia. Don't say that you're not testing in production.
So I'm interested to dig deeper about these 15 minutes. So what actually has to be done in this 15 minutes, apart from building software and also packaging it and deploying it?
Run tests. Absolutely run tests. I know that some languages, like with Golang, hardly takes any time at all. We can run a shit ton of tests. But this is achievable even for things like Ruby, which is notoriously huge to package, slow to run, all this stuff. Our friends at Intercom, who are the ones who came up with the slogan that shipping is your company's heartbeat, which I really value and respect, they run a Ruby monolith, and their entire build and test pipeline runs and deploys in under 10 minutes. It can be done.
Wow.
This can absolutely be done. It's not hard. It's just engineering work. You just need to commit to doing the ongoing work, setting yourself a limit, alert when it goes off, take it seriously and invest in it over time, and you can hold yourself to a high standard.
So I'm also interested with this phrase, shipping is the heartbeat of your company. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Again, this came from Intercom, and I adopted it because I love it so much. Shipping for any tech company, giving value to our users is why we exist. Shipping new changes, shipping new code to our users should be absolutely as common, as ordinary, as uneventful, and as regular. It should be a nothing. It should be a nothing burger. Ask me how many times a day we ship. I don't fucking know. We ship all the time, like a couple times an hour. I don't know, because we're making changes constantly. And it is because those changes are small and uneventful that it's not a big deal. And I feel like we need to invert the way that we think about this. This is a social change. This is a mindset change. But it's not a new thing. The principles of CI/CD have been around for 15 years? Accelerate was written with all the data years ago. Like, we've known this for a very long time. We just need to put it into action. And the thing is, this is so good for engineers. Engineers who have worked with true CI/CD are unwilling to ever go back because it is like a different profession. It is so much more interesting and exciting and up to the moment. You see your real impact on users' lives like many times a day, and that's fundamentally motivating and inspiring. It's real hard to ever be willing to go back to a situation where releases are so far away from your lived experience or someone else's problem. We don't want that.